Hi everybody, guess where we're moving? We're moving to SharePoint. Now, before our migration to SharePoint, our files lived here in the City of Santa Monica server rooms. We're now migrating to the Microsoft Cloud. And I know you know that the cloud doesn't mean up there where the raindrops come from. It simply means off-site servers, and these servers will be in the Microsoft server rooms. Now, your F drive, or for the rent control folks, the R drive, will be moving to SharePoint. Your personal files, which for most of the city is your H drive, and for rent control it's your U drive, will be moving to OneDrive. Now, that'll include anything that you may have saved on your desktop. We recommend you move all of that stuff to your OneDrive, and I'll talk about that at the end of the video because we want you to do that yourselves. But we'll be doing all of the F drive migration so that we can make sure that your files and folders maintain their current permissions, so people don't have access to things that they shouldn't. So you're going to be getting a site that's called a document pool or a data pool, and it will have your department on it, and it will include a square or a link to a library for all of your department, and that's called your departmental share. And everyone in the department can access that. And then you'll have squares, which will be links to libraries for each of your divisions. And we're putting them in separate libraries as divisions shouldn't have access to each other's folders. And if by chance somebody needs to have access to two, we can always add you. But generally, people only have access to their own divisional folders. Now, in some departments who have lots of experience with SharePoint already, we've created a SharePoint data pool or a document pool. And they've decided to make their little squares fancier and add some graphics, and you're welcome to do that. And some departments like Public Works decided to make it a little bit more simple because they have lots and lots of divisions, and they didn't want to take up all of that real estate, so they want to see those all on one page. So you're welcome to get as fancy as you want on the site that we give you. Well, other departments had pre-existing SharePoint sites. I know Fire and Library were in that boat. And what they decided to do, because their staff was already used to or accustomed to going to that other SharePoint site, they created a link to the new site that we're creating where your documents live. And here in the fire department's case, we see that share file in all of their divisions. Now, once we move your data, how are you going to find your site? So if you want, by request, we can make your new SharePoint site the second tab in both your Internet Explorer and your Chrome browsers. Now, you may use other browsers. The only ones that we can control by policy are Internet Explorer and Chrome. You can also create a desktop shortcut. So simply click on the icon to the left of your web address, and if you simply click on it and drag it to your desktop and let go, it'll create a desktop shortcut, and you can always find your SharePoint site that way. You also can create a bookmark in your browser. So in Internet Explorer, while you're on your new document site, simply go to Favorites and Add to Favorites, and it'll add that as a favorite on your list. And in Chrome, go to the ellipses menu in the upper right and click on Bookmarks and bookmark this page. And again, for both of those, you have to be on that new SharePoint site for it to bookmark that site. You can also find your SharePoint site through the Office 365 portal. So if you log in through portal.office.com, and it'll put you on the Office 365 homepage. Now, you'll see, depending on your account, you may see different things on this page, but you'll all see a SharePoint link. Okay, so if I click on the SharePoint button and I start typing in the name of my department, so for this example, I'm using Community and Cultural Services. As I start typing in their name, it'll give me a pick list, and when I see it appear, I can just simply click on my new SharePoint site. So once I click on my site, here is the Community and Cultural Services storage pool. This is very similar to what you're all going to be getting. I already talked about what those squares mean, and that those are links to document libraries. So let me click on one of those. So we'll choose Community Recreation. So I don't see anything here because I don't have access to any of their documents. If I were in Community Recreation, I'd see a bunch of folders and files and all of the stuff that used to be on my F drive. Okay. Now, here's a document library that I have that has lots of documents in it, and I want to just use this for some examples. So if I were to click right now, I'm in the browser. And see, I'm in a SharePoint site called Learning Management System. Here are a bunch of documents. So, or I could right-click on any of those documents in my browser, and I could go to the Open menu, and I have a choice. Do I want to open it in the browser, which is exactly the same as clicking on it, or do I want to open it in the app? Now, we're all used to the word app meaning something on our mobile devices, like our cell phones and tablets. Microsoft is using the word app to also mean the full version of Microsoft Office. So either the full version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, any of the Microsoft applications. Okay, they're calling those the app. So if I open up a document in my browser, you can see there's my web address up at the top. And there's a menu bar that looks similar. If I were to click on any of those, I would see the ribbons. But there are some features that are not available in the browser version of any of the Microsoft programs. So if I open something here, but I meant to open it in the desktop app instead of going back, I could simply click on that Open Desktop App link that's there in the middle of the screen. And either way, whether I right-clicked and said Open in App, or I opened it here and then said Open in App, it would open in the full version of Microsoft Office, the one that we've known and loved forever. So some of the features that are available in the full app and not the browser are track changes. And also, if you're working with a document that's graphics heavy, I would do that in the full version of Word, because the browser sometimes puts graphics in places that look different than they do when you're in the full version. So, and here's the same menu bar, right? There are a couple of other things that I can do here from the full version, and I already mentioned what some of those are. So I mentioned when you're working with documents like PDFs or publisher documents that don't have a browser version, that there's another way to open up those files. So I'm going to go back into my document library. So I'm going to click on whatever square on your departmental site takes you to your division, and there will be a sync button. So if I click on sync and sync now and open Microsoft OneDrive, it will synchronize my documents, creating an offline copy on my computer. Now, it's going to be creating a copy, but they're going to be continually synchronizing. So I will then be able to open up any document from either my File Explorer, or if I have a MacBook, in my Finder. And then Publisher documents, I can just double click, it'll open up in the full version of Publisher, just like I used to from my F drive. Okay, that synchronizing is a very handy feature when you're working with non-Word, Excel, and PowerPoint documents. And what that does, let me show you a visualization. So here on the left, I'm in my browser, and this is that site that I have that has lots of documents in it. And on the right, because I've synchronized this document library with my computer, on the right I'm in my File Explorer, or also called Windows Explorer. And if I scroll down, you would see my F&H drive down there. And up here under where it says City of Santa Monica, those are all SharePoint sites that I have synchronized because I work with lots of different sites. But you'll find your departmental data pool site there, and you can simply click on it and you'll see all of the documents that are on your SharePoint site. One for one, they'll all be there once you synchronize it. But because these documents are continually synchronizing, if you delete a document from either of these views, guess where else it's going to delete from? The other side, and it's in real time. So I mention that because I don't want you to think, oh, I see these over here on the right and I see them over there on the left, and I want to do some cleanup, let me get rid of one of them. Because if you delete it, it'll delete it from the other side, okay? Because those documents are continually synchronizing. Now, on the left-hand side where you see the browser, if you look at the menu bar on the very left, you'll see there's a recycle bin there. If by chance you delete something by mistake, you can simply go to the recycle bin and click on it and then restore it from there. It'll live in the recycle bin for 93 days. So after that, ISD can still recover that document for an additional 93 days. Once those 93 times 2, or 186 days are over, those documents are gone and we no longer have access to retrieve them. Okay, so be careful with your deleting. You'll also see when you're looking at your document library through your File Explorer or through your Finder, if you're on a Mac, that there's this status column. Now, you won't see a status column when you're on your H drive or your F drive, only when you're in either your OneDrive or a SharePoint site document library through your File Explorer. And I mention this because I want to demystify what those icons are. So you see a cloud icon there, and you see a couple of different kinds of circles. So we see a circle that's hollow with a check mark, and we see a circle that's solid with a check mark. So those mean three different things. The icons that are clouds simply mean that those documents only exist in the cloud. I could access them by double-clicking on them from here, and if I did that, it would change into the green circle that's hollow. From 2 weeks from when I last opened up a document, it brings it down to my computer. So while it brings down a copy, it's still actively synchronizing. So I can make changes, but those are still going to be writing back to my SharePoint site. Now, the benefit of having something in one of those two circle icons is that while it's on my computer, if I were to go somewhere where I didn't have internet access, like on an airplane flight where I didn't buy the Wi-Fi, or staying at a hotel for a conference, those icons would become red, but I would still be able to access those documents. It just wouldn't be actively synchronizing while those icons are red. It'll be letting me make changes, it'll save it in this local copy, and then the minute my laptop connects to Wi-Fi, I don't even have to open up those documents. Those icons will become green, and they will start synchronizing with SharePoint. Now, the difference between the hollow circle and the solid circle is that, as I mentioned, if you double-click on something that is a cloud, it'll become the hollow circle for 2 weeks. 2 weeks from the last open date, this circle will remain a circle, and then in 2 weeks, it goes back to being a cloud icon. If by chance I were going on a long trip where I knew I weren't going to have internet access, like the top of Machu Picchu for 14 days or something, if I right-click on any of those documents, I have some choices. I could say always keep on this device, which will make it a solid circle. And I'm going to want to do that while I'm here at the city or somewhere connected to Wi-Fi, because then it'll make it available when I'm off-site without Wi-Fi. If I have a whole bunch of documents that I've said always keep on this device, and I get an error message that my hard drive is filling up, I could select all of those documents and right-click and then click on Free Up Space, and it would send those all back to being cloud icons. Okay? So if you don't plan on working off-site, the always on this device is less important for you, but the Free Up Space is good in case you're working on many, many, many documents and they're all brought down to your hard drive and they're large files. Maybe they have graphics or there's some type of file that is extraordinarily large. You might want to right-click and free up space as you move on to the next document. So I want to just review those status icons. So the cloud means that a file resides only in the cloud, meaning it's only in SharePoint. I can see a link to it, but it only lives there. The hollow green means that a file resides in the cloud and temporarily on my computer. The solid icon means that files reside in the cloud and permanently on my computer. Now, the synchronizing icon happens if you select a bunch of documents. Maybe I click on a whole folder, I right-click and I say always on this device. It might take a couple of seconds for those to become those solid icons. And in the process, I'll just see that synchronizing icon. Now, if you ever see this red icon when your documents are synchronizing, it means that there's some sort of a synchronizing error. Now, in the whole time that I've been working in SharePoint, I've never had this sync error. But if you see that, that's when you're going to want to call our service desk or put in a Compass request, because your file won't be synchronizing back to SharePoint, and we want to figure out why that is so that your SharePoint is always the holder of your current versions of files. Now, I want to give you a couple of reminders if you're going to synchronize your document libraries, which I recommend that you do. Synchronizing makes it easier for you to access PDFs, especially if it's a fillable PDF. you're going to want to synchronize your documents and open it from there. That way it'll open up in the full version of Adobe. It's also easier to access Microsoft Publisher files for the same reason, because Microsoft did not make a light version of Publisher. So if you open up a Publisher file in the cloud, it's going to let you preview it, but if you need to make changes, it's going to make you download it. Now, if I'm synchronizing my documents, here's my File Explorer, and if I click on a PDF, like I said, it'll open up directly in Adobe Acrobat. So synchronizing is your ticket for any of those programs that are not Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Okay. So one more reminder, if you're going to be co-authoring, meaning that multiple people are going to be working on a document at the same time, which is a great benefit of Office 365, both SharePoint and OneDrive, you don't want to work from a synchronized copy of a file. So in co-authoring, you're going to want to go into your browser and either open it in the browser or right-click and go to open and open it in the app, in which case it'll open in the full version of Word, but you'll be working with the SharePoint document directly rather than a synchronized copy. And the reason for that is because when you're co-authoring by default keeps you from creating conflicting changes in a document. So if I'm working on it and you're working on it, we won't be able to edit the same paragraph because it locks at the paragraph level. In Excel, it locks at the cell level, and in PowerPoint, it locks at the object level. So I wouldn't be able to make changes that conflict with something that you're currently doing. However, if you're working with a synchronized copy, it will let you make conflicting changes. It just won't let you resynchronize. So synchronizing happens automatically, but if you make conflicting changes, it'll stop your synchronization, and that's where you'll get that little red X. Okay? That will make more sense as you use SharePoint, but just remember that when you're co-authoring, meaning both people are working or multiple people are working on a document at the same time, you don't want to access a synchronized copy. You want to go straight to the browser. Just to show you what co-authoring looks like, multiple people can be in this document that I have open here, and you'll be able to see who's making changes to your document, and you'll also see their text in real time. So it's a super handy feature. Just remember the synchronizing part. So now let's jump into the live SharePoint portal, and I'll show you some other cool features. Okay, so here we are in the live portal, and I just want to go over a couple of things while we're here. So I'm in the Office 365 portal. Now, if you don't know how to get to this, you can simply go to a browser and go to portal.office.com. And the first time you go there, you'll have to put in your full email address, which is your username in Office 365, and then your network password. And there's a lot to this portal that I'm not going to cover in this video, but what I will cover is this SharePoint icon. And I mentioned this earlier when I was going through the PowerPoint slides, but if I click on SharePoint, it brings me to a screen where I can search for different SharePoint sites. So if I were in Public Works, I could just start typing in Public Works, and there's the Public Works data pool. Or it even brings up, because Santa Monica Public Library has the word public in it, there's the library. I could go to rent control, and whatever I do, whatever data pool site, you'll click on yours, of course, it'll bring me to the front page of my data pool site. And so I'm going to just use rent control as an example. We have not migrated them yet, so I won't be showing anything confidential. Here we have the departmental share folder, which is a folder that everyone in the department will have access to. It's kind of like citywide share, except on a departmental level. Then you'll have these squares for your different divisions. Now, these squares are just simply links to document libraries where your documents are going to live. Now, typically, all the hearings people will have access to the hearing stuff, InfoSys people, legal, whatever your divisions are. Admin people will typically have access to all of the admin files, except there may be some personnel files or things like that may be just your director and executive assistant, maybe assistant director or principal analyst have some sub-permissions on certain folders that the whole division doesn't need to see. So if I were to click on any of those folders, now we haven't migrated them, but we have done some testing. So here's some different files and folders you can see. Here's the recycle bin that I talked about if I accidentally delete something, and I'll show you what that looks like. If I click on a file and I accidentally delete it, which is kind of hard to do because you have to do some clicking and confirming. But if I do that, then I go to the recycle bin. Now, I've been playing with this site, so there's a lot of different things, but here's that one that I just accidentally deleted. And I could click on it, the little circle next to the file, and I could say restore. And that would move that back to, I can go back to the home page of my SharePoint site just by clicking on the title. And I could go back to admin and I would see, now, as I mentioned, anywhere I am in this SharePoint site, the title of the site will take me back to the home page. Here's the recycle bin. You'll also see your divisions off on the left. Unless somebody who has rights to edit this site in your department maybe change this menu, you can turn this menu off. There's lots of things that you can do. But here are these files. Okay. Now, here's that sync button that I talked about. So if I were to click on sync, and I think this should be the first thing that you do when you get your new SharePoint site, and then click on sync now and open Microsoft OneDrive. Now, don't be thrown because OneDrive and SharePoint are two different things. This is not going to synchronize these documents with your OneDrive. I'm not sure why Microsoft chose that verbiage. I would change it if it were up to me, but it's not. So once you do that, and I'll just do this here, I'll unsynchronize it later. And then if I open up my File Explorer, City of Santa Monica, as I mentioned when I was going through the PowerPoint, and I can see Santa Monica Rent Control Shared Data Pool Admin, and there's all those testing files. Now, I just synchronized this, so none of these live on my computer yet because I haven't opened them. But if I wanted to, I could select a document, right-click, and here's that always keep on this device. And here we have the green circle. Or if I just opened up a document, see how it turns to the hollow circle, and it's opening up the Word document in the background. And here's my Word document. Now, also, as I mentioned, if I were to delete anything, so we have testing 123, testing 98765, and testing for rent control. So here we have those same folders, right? Let me just show you both screens here. If I were to delete one of these folders, like this 98765 testing folder, I can either hit my delete button and confirm, or I could select it and then choose delete on the top. You'll notice that it also disappeared from here in my File Explorer. Okay, so let's talk for just a second about this recycle bin. The recycle bin is there no matter where you are on the site. So here I am in the main page where I see all of my document library links. I can go within a document library and still see the recycle bin. No matter where I am on this SharePoint site, when I click on recycle bin, I will only see the documents that I had permission to see before they were deleted. So if you deleted maybe a duplicate copy of a performance evaluation, if somebody from another division who doesn't have rights to see that went to the recycle bin off the main page, they would not see that because the document permissions follow that document throughout its lifespan, so including in the recycle bin. So that's an important thing to know. So I also want to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to open up any one of these documents. So let me show you some new things about the top of the Word app, or the full version of Word. So up at the top of the Microsoft Word window, and this is the same for Excel and PowerPoint, rather than just seeing the name of the document like we used to, this is actually a drop-down. Now I could rename this document right from here. So if I say, oh, I don't want this to be called Testing for Rent Control, I want this to be called Testing for Rent Control 123, and I hit enter, that now renamed that document in real time. So look, if I go back to my File Explorer, Testing for Rent Control 123, or if I go back to my browser, Testing for Rent Control 123. So right within the document, I was able to rename that in real time. You'll also see from this drop-down the location of where the document is stored. So it's stored in the Santa Monica Rent Control Shared Data Pool SharePoint site, in the admin document library. And the third thing that you'll see on this drop-down up here is a version history. So I'm going to click on this. Now this document hasn't had a lot of action. Not a lot of things were done to it, but it looks like I created it on December 2nd. I was probably doing a training for rent control that day, a live training. I renamed it. I modified it. I modified it again. I modified it again. I must have deleted it because I restored it. And then I just renamed it today. Today's the 6th of January. Now I could open up any one of those version histories just by clicking on Open History. And let's go back to this very first version and let's compare this one Now what this did, you can see there's my original document. Here's the one where I could compare or restore. And here's another document without any name. And it did an on-the-fly track changes version of this version and the most current version of this document, right? It just created this on the fly. And it's acting as if I had turned on track changes back then, but this is showing me what's different between then and now. So that's pretty handy. So I'm just going to close this and not save it. You can always recreate version history comparisons at any time. And I'm not going to save this one. And here we are back at the original document that I renamed just now. So there's also a couple of other things in the Microsoft Word app that also are in Excel and PowerPoint. Autosave by default is on for any document that's stored in the Microsoft Cloud. So that means in SharePoint, any SharePoint site, and also in OneDrive. So if I were to make some changes to this document, very pithy, brilliant, my most creative document changes I've ever made. I don't have to save this document. I don't have to do Control S or File Save or anything. Those are automatically saved as soon as I type them in. Now that's generally a good thing that you don't have to remember to save frequently anymore like we used to in the olden days. But if you ever wanted to just play around with some verbiage and have it not save, you could simply turn off autosave just by clicking up there. It's kind of like changing settings on your mobile devices. Just turn it off and turn it back on again. It's just a toggle. Okay. Now, if I were to have this version open, and I'm gonna co-author right before your very eyes. Let me just open up this one. So here I'm in the browser. You can see I'm in a browser. Here I am. This is the light version of Word. There's some things that we're not seeing, like my Adobe Acrobat plugin and so on and so forth. And now you can see, because I'm also in this document in the full app, it says that I'm also editing this document, which I am, because I have it open in both places. If I were to add some more verbiage in here, see how as I type on the left screen, things are being typed on the right screen, because we're co-authoring. And if, for example, this was somebody else that had this open on their computer, they would see my changes, they could hover over, and they would see that I was the one making those changes, okay? And it would make a new version of the document, which, let's see, I think we have to close this and go back to version history, and there it is, modified by Corey Newlander at 3:15, okay? So that's co-authoring. Now remember what I said, if you're going to be co-authoring, rather than opening up a document from your File Explorer, which is a synchronized document, I would go directly into your browser, your Rent Control site, and then into your document library. And from here, I could right-click, and I'll do this on a different document. I could right-click and go to Open, and I could open this in the app or in the browser. But I think people are more likely going to want to work in the app. And then open Excel, and that will open, okay? And that's, now this is, I'm prime here for co-authoring, and it will not let me make conflicting changes. So what are conflicting changes, by the way? In Microsoft Word, when you're co-authoring, it's locked at the paragraph level. So two people can't be editing the same paragraph at the same time. In Excel, it's locked at the cell level. And in PowerPoint, it's locked at the object level. So that's like a text box or an image or smart art, something like that at the object level in PowerPoint. Okay, so a couple more things. Here I am back in my File Explorer, and I'm back in the Santa Monica Rent Control Shared Data Pool -admin. And here are my status icons. Now, these are the two documents I was just working with, so it makes sense that these are temporarily brought down to my computer. And like I said before, I could right-click on any of those documents and I could say, always keep on this device, in which case this would become a solid green. And I could say, free up space. Now, if you don't ever need to be working away from an internet connection, maybe you don't ever work away from your desk, or if you do, you're always connected to Wi-Fi of some sort, then you don't need to worry as much about always on this device. But what you may need to worry about, depending on the kind of documents that you work with, if you're in City TV and you work with large media files, or you're in architecture services, engineering, or building and safety, where you work with big, huge plan files or GIS files or things like that. If you open up a bunch of those and you have enough open that the total space of them being temporarily brought down to your hard drive significantly fills up your hard drive, then what you may need to do, if you get any kind of a hard drive error message, is just go and right-click and say, free up space, okay? And if you right-click and do something, one of those options, without selecting a file, by the way, it'll do it to every file in your document library, just so you know. So if you're going to be hiking Machu Picchu and you only want to bring a couple of documents, just make sure to select those documents before you right-click and say, always keep on this device. Okay. So what's next? Well, I've showed you how to access your site, how to remind yourself where it is later, either through a desktop shortcut, a bookmark, going through the Office 365 portal. I've showed you how to use Microsoft Office in the cloud and also the app or the desktop version, and many other features in SharePoint and in OneDrive. ISD will notify your department of your date of migration. So if you haven't already been migrated, expect to hear from us soon, and we'll let you know what day we're going to migrate your files. We generally do it at the end of the week. So when you leave on either a Thursday or a Friday, depending on the week, when you come back in that following Monday, your F drive will be marked read-only, but all of your F drive files will be in your new SharePoint site. Now, additional training will be provided. So this video is one way of getting out the information on your new SharePoint sites, but I will also be providing live training for each of your departments, either a week, two, sometimes more than that, in advance of your migration, so that everyone in your department will have a chance to see how your new SharePoint site works, how to access your documents, and so on and so forth. Now, as I mentioned, your H drive should be moved to OneDrive. So we will be moving your F drive for you so that we can maintain all of the existing permissions that your F drive has. For example, everyone in your admin division has access to your admin files, but there may be some subfolders that your director and executive assistant, maybe assistant director and principal analyst, have access to. And those subfolders have certain restrictive permissions on them, perhaps. While ISD migrates your F drive, we will retain all of those permissions, so when your files are in SharePoint, nobody sees anything that they shouldn't. When it comes to your H drive, because you're the only one that can currently access those files, those can simply be dragged and dropped over to OneDrive, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here I am in my File Explorer, and just as a reminder, in Rent Control, this will be your U drive. If I select my H drive or my U drive, and I open up OneDrive, I can synchronize those documents as I showed you before, right, and access those from there. And I have that same status column. Now, if I want to migrate everything from my H drive to OneDrive, I can simply select however many files on my H drive I want to keep, and simply click and drag and drop them over to my OneDrive. Okay, now I don't have a lot left on my H drive because I migrated all my stuff already, but it's as simple as a click and drag. You just need to have both windows open. Now, I just want to point something out. You'll notice here on the left, there's no status column because I'm highlighting my H drive. So something that is not in the cloud, like SharePoint and OneDrive, doesn't have a status column. The only place you'll see status is in your SharePoint or OneDrive documents that you've synchronized with your computer. So these are not currently synchronized. I'm looking at my H drive on one side and my OneDrive on the other. Okay, so I want to be very clear about that. You have to actually move stuff to your OneDrive. We're not currently going to be synchronizing anything there. So while you may be in a position of migrating years worth of data from either your H drive or Rent Control, your U drive, over to OneDrive, it also may be a really good opportunity to Happy SharePointing, everyone.